Welcome to Watercolor Journaling. I am Bonnie Krebs, creator of watercolor stamping and this technique. And so this week I'm going to walk you through the Good Shepherd set. So I'm going to show you how to stamp and watercolor this scene into your Bible. And remember, you can do this in a journal as well. So make sure that you prep your page. That's really, really important. I've already done that. And basically what I've done is brush on a primer, and that will keep my page protected so that it doesn't pucker and it doesn't bleed through. So if you aren't familiar with that, go back to the beginning and watch the video on page prep, and you'll see exactly how to do that. So we're going to stamp the Good Shepherd set. I'm going to show you how to put this scene together. I've chosen Psalm 23, so that's a really appropriate place to stamp this. The psalm is about the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And so I think this is a perfect place to illustrate that. So let's get started with that. We're going to start out by stamping these images. So we're going to start out stamping and work our way up to the top. So I'm going to start out by inking this set. This is the largest one. It's going to go right almost in the center. And you know, these are really versatile, so you can use just a few at a time too. You don't necessarily have to use the entire set. You can use just a few. So what I'm doing is inking the sheep and the stones. So this area over here, I'm going to ink those up first, and this is sepia, so number 45. And then I'm going to go back over that whole thing with African violet. So I'm just going to ink that all up again, the whole thing. And you can see that I did not ink this line right here. So this is the grassy line, and I'm just going to take my marker now, the green, and just ink that one. And then I'm ready to stamp this into my Bible. And I think probably about here is good. Yep, that looks good. So let's go on to the next one. And this one is going into the foreground. It's a little shepherd's staff, and it also has some more stones. So we're going to ink this one the same way again. And this time we're going to ink the whole thing. So there's no grassy line that we have to keep separate. So I'm inking it with the sepia first, and then I'm going back over it with the African violet. So two colors. And I'm just going to place this one right here in the foreground. So just like that, looks good. And then I'm going to take my little single sheep. Looks like he's grazing in the grass, and I'm going to do the same exact thing with him. So sepia first, and then African violet. And I'm going to stamp him just a little bit higher up here. And we've got room up here now at the top of the page. And we're going to stamp these little tiny guys. So this little flock of sheep, we're going to stamp them up at the top. So again, same process. Ink this whole thing up with sepia, and then go back over it with the African violet. So be careful when you're stamping these in here. Don't just mash that stamp into the paper. So we want these things to be pretty light. We don't want them to be too dark and too heavy of an outline. Okay, so we've got all of our images stamped in here. So the next step now is to pull the color out of the lines, and we're going to do that with a brush and water. So I've just dipped my brush in water, and now I'm going to pinch it off so that it's flat. And I will start by dragging this color out of the line. And think about, you know, these sheep are white or mostly white, and so they're not gonna have a lot of color on them. And when you're thinking about things that are white, the color or the shadow, especially things that are fluffy and white, is going to be at the bottom. So make sure when you're pulling this color out, you're concentrating that color to the bottom of the sheep. Now the little ears are dark, so we can pull out a little more color there, especially these back in here. Be really careful that you don't get too much color. So just really pinch your brush off so that you don't get too much ink. on here and just kind of work your way around. Take your time. This is fun. And the whole point of, Bible journaling is to keep us in our Bible and on this page. And we can read the text and we can think about what it means. And we can illustrate it so that it stays in our mind. And if you think you're getting too much, just pinch your brush off again and go back over it. And just take your time. Their little faces are going to be darker. This little guy too. And just kind of drag that color out. You can take your time with this because even though you stamp it, you can go back to it days later and it's going to be fine. So a lot of that is because of this watercolor ground, and it just kind of makes every surface like watercolor paper. So it just works great. So if you're a little nervous about stamping in your Bible right away, try this in a journal. And get your confidence up. And next thing you know, you'll be illustrating your Bible. So fun. So I've moved down to the rocks, and you can see these are the same process. So these are rounded, so that just means that they have a contour to them, and that means the highlight is going to be at the top. So again, basically what we're doing is we're keeping the color to the bottom where the shadow would be, and that's going to give us a more three-dimensional image. So that's really what we're going for, is a painting. We want this to look like a painting, not a coloring book. Not something that's one-dimensional. We want this to look like it's a three-dimensional image. And there's a few little things that we've got to remember in doing that. And one of them is the highlight. That's going to make a huge difference. I hope I'm not off the page here. I think I am off the camera. So let me move my page up. And I'm just going through here, pulling the color out of the lines, just like I did before. Okay, so now I can take some of this green now and drag some of this color out. And you can see how that just really blends. And I'm going to now add some little more dimension to this painting. So I'm going to take, actually I'm going to take my green. So this is a number 15 green, the fine tip, and I'm just going to bring this around. Don't worry about this. Don't worry about getting this perfect. This is not a big deal. And I'm just going to make another straight line just out here like that. And what I've done is I've just kind of created a little stream in here. And that's really all we have to do. And then go back over that now with your brush. And you can see how that just softens the lines. So fun. So even if you're not an artist, this is really for you if you're not an artist, because a lot of times people who are naturally artistic, they kind of know how to paint things themselves. They don't really need to have stamps, and they don't need a lot of help. But people who are not naturally artistic, who are maybe more gifted left brain, it's helpful for you to have an aid like this. And it really makes a difference to have something a little more structured, but you can do a painting like this in your Bible. You really can. Okay, so let's go on now. So I'm going to add more color in here from my palette. So my palette is just a little plexiglass plate like this. And I'm just going to add some color from my marker. And that's the same green again. And I'm just going to brush in a little color into here. A little color up in here. And then up here where this little guy is. And then these guys up at the top. Make sure that I'm not off the camera here. And then down in here as well. And you know, you don't have to get every area because we're just giving the idea of things. So we're just giving the idea that this is a grassy hill. And so you can totally get that without coloring every single inch of this page. Okay, let's go on to the blue. So let's use the African violet. So I'm going to place this onto my palette again and dip my brush and just brush this color in. You can use any blue for your little stream. And this, you know, doesn't have to be perfect. Again, we're just giving the idea of it. You totally get the idea that these little sheep are by a stream. Just by brushing in a little color. Let's add now some color to these stones, and I'm gonna color some sepia on my palette, and I'm just gonna add a little more color in here. Again, keep that color to the bottom because we want to make sure we see that highlight, so there shouldn't be any color at the very top of these stones. If you get too much on there, just blend it out. Okay, that looks pretty good. And I think everything is pretty dry here. So let's go ahead to the next step, and that's to add some grass. So I'm going to ink this up now. This is the little tiny grass. It's in this set. So we're using this one with the sheep. We're also using this one. So this is the foliage set, and it's this little grass right here. And that's actually the only other one that you need to use. And we're going to kind of walk this and just kind of, you can stamp this wherever you want. Just tap it in a bunch of times. That's really the key to these, is to make sure that you're stamping this in here a bunch. Right over by these rocks. We can put some more over in here next to this little sheep. And just, you know, tap in as much as you want. And then add water. So kind of pull that color up and away. So you still kind of get the impression that this is grass, but we're softening it and kind of blending it out. And up here, these sheep are pretty far away, so we don't really necessarily want to use the same size grass up here. And I don't know, you know, when they're far away like this, if you would actually see the blades of grass like this. So we want to show that they're farther away. And if we use the same size grass, it's going to look like they're at the same distance from us. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's take some of this African violet now, and we're just going to put a little shadow underneath these little sheep. Don't stress out about this part. Don't stress out about any of this. And you know, the thing about this technique is that the more that you do it, the better at it you're going to get. So if you allow yourself to try it, you're going to be surprised how well you do. You really will. Start out with something simple, or try it on a journal first, and then try it in your Bible. Okay, that looks pretty good. You can see we didn't need a lot of colors and we didn't need a lot of stamps. And I'm just going to take my sepia now and just make sure that these eyes are really dark. Sometimes when you're stamping, those kinds of things can get washed out. And I'm just make sure that this leg back in the background, these are really dark. Don't be afraid to go back in with your fine tips and really get some of these details. That's okay to do. You know, where things would be really dark, make sure those are really dark. And inside these little rocks, you know, where they kind of come together, make that dark in there. That would be really dark. And all these things together kind of work to create a little watercolor painting. And I'm going to add just a little of this sepia now to these sheep. You know, they've been out in the field, so they're not super white. But I am being careful to keep the tops of them very light. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and put the sentiment in, and I think I'm going to use a positioner because I want to be sure that I don't stamp this in here crooked and I get it right exactly where I want it to be. So I'm placing the little shield into my L bar and I'm going to ink my sentiment. Now this set comes with 3 different sentiments. I'm using the one "You Make Me Dwell in Safety," and I'm just going to stamp this here. But you know, there's plenty of space for you to write in your own thoughts. So the things that you have been, that God has spoken to you about this passage, things that you're going through maybe at the time, you have space to write that in. And that's part of the reason that I sort of group these things the way that they are, so that there is space in between so that you can write your own text. But if you just want to use this text from the set and make it simple, you can certainly do that too. So I'm just going to ink this in the, actually, I think I'm going to ink that in the sepia. And I'm going to stamp it, just place that into the corner. So just like this, and I can see now exactly where to place it and make sure that it's straight. And my Bible has journaling lines, so I can sort of use that as a guideline and make sure that I really get it in the right place. So I'm just going to ink this again. And I've got that sentiment. You can, if you want to, you can add sort of a completer and do some sky up here. And that will just kind of complete the top of the page. I don't know if completer is actually a word, but we can just say it is. So we've got some sky in there, and we've got part 1 of our page done. So we will, in the next video, go on to part 2, and we'll do the left side of the Bible. So join me next time when we finish up. Be sure to date. So when you are doing these things in your Bible, be sure to write the date in here so that you have that as a remembrance. And I so appreciate you watching this video. Thank you so much. One more thing, follow me on Instagram. I have a new Instagram account, Bonnie Krebs, Bible journaling, and I have lots of little ideas, borders, little mini videos, and things to help inspire you. So if you want more watercolor and want more Bible journaling inspiration, check me out on Instagram. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.